BXB. It's in the game!
Hey guys, it's me Ben, back with another one of my quick reviews, and this time I'm looking at The Fall Part 2, Unbound, as of today, available on Xbox One, PS4 and PC. This is the sequel to The Fall, if you hadn't already worked that out, which was a cool little adventure game from a couple of years ago with a fantastic sci-fi setting, and this, I'm happy to say, is much of the same. But let me put this right up at the top with a disclaimer. You're going to notice this footage is dark. Now, I think this has happened because of my brightness settings when predominantly playing this on my Xbox One X, which required me to set the in-game settings very low for brightness because my TV outputs it quite high, and that has inadvertently meant my capture is dark as all hell. Please don't blame the game for this. This is on me. And as I said, this is a continuation of The Fall's storyline following Ari, our Unbound AI, in her ongoing adventure to really just discover more about herself and about the world she's in and how she interacts with those around her. There are some brilliant story beats here about self and the nature of consciousness and the nature of sort of self-determination and a real sort of exploration of the human psyche, and we get a lot more in-depth character work around Ari and around her sort of, I wouldn't say friends, but the people she meets and the other intelligence she meets. Now, the conceit, I guess, in The Fall 2, it's difficult to talk about The Fall 2 without giving spoilers away, or spoilers away for the previous game, I must say, which I also highly suggest you check out. But Ari is out and about a bit more and less tethered to her physical realm than she was before, which means she gets to inhabit the sort of physical manifestations of three other characters: a butler, a sort of warrior Ronin robot almost, and a pleasure bot. And all of these bring about some very interesting thoughts, discussions, dialogue, and musings on what it is to serve, what it is to be someone in a position that you have been carved out in, that you don't necessarily have the ability to self-determine. And it really goes into some fantastic themes, this game, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that because the joy of playing this game is really discovering that story and those narratives and those characters. I found them quite unique and fun, and as they really broke free of the archetypes and the cliches you'd perhaps expect those characters to inhabit, they really come alive through Ari's sort of investigation into them. I absolutely loved all of that. The gameplay is the same in many ways as the original Fall, with a point and click, quite slow, methodical movement nature, using the light beam that emanates from your extremity, because it changes depending on the character you're inhabited, and that will look at sort of various points that you can interact with in various ways, in combination of objects and the such. The puzzle elements are pretty tough. This game is quite hard. I definitely needed to spend time thinking about the solutions and really how items would interact with other items, and lots of backtracking, going back and forth and looking at things in various ways. Much like the first game, the combat is still the weakest element. Things have been done to alleviate some of that. The controls are a little bit better perhaps, but there's more complexity in some of the combat now, though you can select a simplified combat option from the offset, and I'd probably suggest you do that, in all honesty, because this isn't why you're playing The Fall Part 2. You're not playing it for its combat, and I felt maybe at times, you know, the way the combat kind of happens in this overarching simulation setting, which is how you kind of explore this network, and that's often where we get combat, though there is combat that happens on a 2D plane, melee combat, due to mostly focusing around one of the particular characters. I actually really enjoyed the melee combat. It actually reminded me of, I think it was One Fingered Death Punch, which was an indie game on the Xbox 360, which was really, really cool game to play, and it had combat similar to that. And that's quite fun to do. However, the shooting combat is less than ideal. It's definitely the weakest element of the game. But I can't stress enough that the narrative and the story and the themes of this game are what makes you want to play it. Now, I would say perhaps the game goes on a little bit longer than it should have, especially with some of the complexity of the puzzles. It means the story can get dragged out somewhat artificially, though I don't think completely artificially. I really think the scenarios that you go through as you bring together the disparate characters of the full part 2 towards the climax, it does justify its length in that regard. I just think perhaps the game could have been a tighter experience overall, but I certainly don't have much more to fault other than that. I absolutely adore this story. It's part 2 of a trilogy. I hope the guys at the studio over the moon can really pull together the funding for the conclusion of this, because I'm excited to see where it goes and where Ari ends up next, with or without her body and with or without her new group of friends. It shall be exciting to see the conclusion. So I'm really glad this game exists. I'm really glad they were able to make the sequel, and due to all of that, I enjoyed my time immensely with the full part 2, and I'm going to give it 4 out of 5 stars.
BXB. It's in the game.